But right now, it's been a day of enormous upheaval in Bangladesh, where after weeks of protests and violent clashes, the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has resigned and fled the country. These pictures show the moment she boarded a helicopter to leave the capital, Dhaka. More than 300 people have been killed since a student protest over civil service job quotas began last month, escalating into demands for the Prime Minister to stand down after 15 years in power. Not long after Sheikh Hasina left, thousands of anti-government protesters stormed her official residence, while crowds celebrated in the streets as well. Widespread looting has also been reported. In a televised address to the nation, the head of Bangladesh's army promised justice for all the Bangladeshi people and said an interim government would be formed. Let's have a listen.
The Honourable Prime Minister has resigned from her post and we will form an interim government to run the country. I had invited the leaders from all political parties to have a discussion and we have decided to form an interim government. We are now going to meet the Honourable President to discuss the formation of this interim government. Please keep faith and trust in the army. I take the responsibility and I promise to protect the lives and property of the people. Don't lose faith in the army. We will fulfil your demands and bring peace and harmony back to our country. I ask you all to support the army and stop the violence, murders, hooliganism and protests.
Well, let's speak now to the BBC's Akbar Hussain, who is in the Bangladeshi capital, Dhaka. Akbar, hello to you. Evening time there now. Tell us what the mood is like in the capital.
Violence is still going on in capital and other parts of the country, and we have seen still protesters. They are, two sides of the story. Many of them are, celebrating their victories. On the other hand, they are chanting slogans. They are describing Sheikh Hasina as a dictator, and they are describing the situation as a fall of a dictator. But on the other hand, many people, they have stormed inside the official residence to the Ganabhavan, official residence of the Prime Minister, and at the same time they stormed the country's parliament building and they vandalized there, and many people, they looted things from parliament building and the Prime Minister's residence. And in the meantime, we have seen Dhaka and elsewhere in the country, many police stations were set on fire, and many police stations in even the houses of the pro-Awami League, the Sheikh Hasina's party, party men, their houses were set on fire. So violence is still going on, and in the meantime, the country's main international airport has been closed for 6 hours because police is facing public backlash, and so in many parts, police went under hiding. So immigration police, they are not working in the main international airport. That's why the main international airport is closed for 6 hours. So violence is still going on. On the other hand, political leaders, they are holding meetings with the army chief and the president, and they are actually trying to formulate a non-party interim government, but it is not clear how the government will run the country and who will be the people heading the government, who will head the government, and who will be the people included in the cabinet. So this is not yet clear. On the other hand, students are saying that they will have to have share on the new government because it is their movement, they have made it happen. So without them, nothing can happen in future. So it's a very difficult time for Bangladesh's army chief to form a neutral government. Because without an inclusive government, I think the unrest we can see now, it will not be erased very soon. And the thing is that, the army chief is urging the people to calm down, and other political leaders, they are also urging people to go back to their homes. But people are still celebrating their victory, and at the same time, lootings are taking place.
OK, Akbar, thank you for bringing us right up to date. Akbar Hussain in the Bangladeshi capital, saying there that protests, violence are still continuing, both in the capital and in other parts of the country as well. Well, let's get more analysis now with our South Asia editor, Anbarasan Ethirajan, who's with me in the studio. Anbarasan, good to have you with us on the programme. Really, these protests have been driven by a youth demographic who feel economically disenfranchised. Would you agree with that?
It started with the students because they felt that they were out of the Bangladesh's so-called economic growth. Many students were coming out of universities were not finding the jobs. And they were also upset about a court decision to bring back reservations in civil service jobs, where nearly 56% of the jobs were reserved for various categories. And they were particularly unhappy with a third of the jobs for the families of the veterans of the country's independence war in 1971. Well, Bangladesh was also exporting labor. People, expatriate workers going to different places. But what the youth wanted, nearly 18 million people coming out without jobs, they wanted jobs which are better paid, and they see what's happening in the rest of the world. So they started this protest, inside the university, but it was the government which made it worse by going and attacking them inside the university, bringing them out. Then the general public, it became a mass movement. They all joined, people from all walks of life. So the trigger was the student protest, and people listened to the student leaders when they said march towards Dhaka. And when tens of thousands of people started moving, the government fell.
The head of the army seems to be in charge for the moment. What can you tell us about Uzzaman? And when he talks about an interim government, what could that look like? What could that mean?
First, he faces challenges. First, he needs to bring order on the streets of Bangladesh. What we are hearing is looting, as our colleague was telling earlier, and also minority communities like Hindus being attacked. Now, there is a political vacuum, especially after a situation like this, when there is no government. If there is a vacuum, that's where anarchy sets in. So the immediate thing for many people would have expected him to declare a curfew so that you can bring in order. But he has been requesting people to go back. But people are still celebrating. When there is a mob, when there is a crowd, things can go out of control. The second challenge for him is about forming a government which is agreeable to everyone. The army was in the similar situation in 2007. And now they don't want to repeat the mistake. So they are calling all the political parties to have a representation here so that a government can be agreeable. The more the delay, the more the uncertainty, you will see more problems, issues in law and order.
OK, Anwar Hassan, thank you very much for your analysis of the situation in Bangladesh. Anwar Hassan Ethirajan, our South Asia editor. Well, students, as Anwar Hassan was saying, were at the very origin of these protests. And right now we can talk to one student in Bangladesh. That's Fardeen Rahman. He's a student at Brak University in the capital, Dhaka. He took part in that wave of protests. Thank you very much for joining us, Fardeen. And in your words, why did you feel compelled to join those protests in the first place?
Okay, so I come from a very privileged background in this city compared to like most of the country. And initially, that pull to the movement wasn't there. But the moment when I realized what is at stake and the purpose of it, I feel like it was more about the movement and more about the people, the majority of the country that's pushing it. So initially, and after that, when people started to die for it, and that's when I realized how much is at stake for a quota, for a job quota that people are giving their lives for.
So when you talk about what's at stake, you meant the ability for people to have an economic franchise, to actually have a stake in society in terms of employment prospects, the ability to make a living.
Right, yes, exactly. So, it means that much to them because this job that they're going to get, this government job, is a stepping stone to a better life, to the poverty-stricken life they have been living. So to these students, they feel like these opportunities have been taken away from them due to this quota that they initially were protesting for.
But more than 300 people killed, protesters, police, others. What do you think about the violence that has accompanied these protests, which we heard from our correspondent still exists on the streets? And also, what do you think that an interim government might bring? Is that what you want to see? We heard from the head of the army earlier. He made a televised address to the nation saying he wanted justice for everyone. Do you feel convinced by what he said?
So this anti-discrimination student movement that we have incurred did not initially started off with a quota movement, but the moment the violence has been like oppressed against us, it became to so much more. It became, the movement not only was about the quota, it became to fight corruption, it became to fight the autocracy that existed, it became a fight against police brutality. In my campus, in Bank University, we had a siege where police shot tear gases and sound grenades in our own campus, a place that we considered our home. In this new interim government that you're talking about, we want, as students, we want freedom of speech. We want free and fair elections. In this new Bangladesh that we hope that we're going to get, we want every single Bangladeshi, regardless of religion or ethnicity or gender.
Is it time for the violence to stop, though?
Right. So, given the situation, now that the interim government has come, we believe that we hope that once the peace and security has been ensured, that the transition can be done. I believe there are university faculties that have proposed a peaceful transition to that, and I hope the interim government does follow that.
And listening to the head of the army earlier talk about delivering justice for all Bangladeshis, what would that look like for you? Last time there was an interim government, it lasted for 2 years before there were elections. So what would you like to see happen this time round?
We hope for a smoother, a more transparent transition. The transition, we cannot be too hopeful that it's going to be quick, but I hope that it's going to be transparent. And I hope that the history that the government does have, the interim government, is not replicated again. Like the mistakes that have happened, like 2 years, we do not wish it to be that long. But the barest minimum that we can hope for is transparency.
OK, Fardeen, good to talk to you and hear your views. Fardeen Rahman, a student at Brack University in the Bangladeshi capital, Dhaka.